George Russell may have just discovered the most brutal truth possible about his Canada DNF. The Mercedes did not simply fail. According to growing FIA scrutiny and mounting pressure inside the paddock, Mercedes may have hidden the real reason the car shut down while Russell was leading the race. And if that is true, this becomes much bigger than one retirement. Russell was dominating the entire weekend. Pole position, sprint victory, race leader. The W17 looked untouchable compared to the rest of the grid. Then suddenly, everything died in the middle of a corner. No power. No electronics. Complete shutdown. Now here is where the story becomes explosive. Russell admitted after the race that he heard strange noises before the failure happened. Mercedes publicly pointed toward an electrical issue connected to the power unit systems. But the deeper the FIA reportedly looks into the situation, the more uncomfortable the questions around Mercedes are becoming. Because Formula One teams do not protect information this aggressively unless something underneath the surface looks even worse. And suddenly, people across the paddock are asking terrifying questions. Did Mercedes already know the car was operating near dangerous limits? Did the non-stop battle between Russell and Antonelli overload systems the team could no longer fully control? Or did Mercedes hide the real explanation because the truth could create an even bigger scandal? That changes everything. Because while Russell watched his championship hopes collapse, Antonelli inherited another victory. 5 consecutive wins now. A 43-point championship lead. And inside Mercedes, the emotional pressure is becoming impossible to hide anymore. Russell looks devastated. Toto Wolff sounded unusually cautious after winning the race. The FIA is reportedly paying closer attention to the technical details behind the failure. And suddenly, the fastest car in Formula One no longer looks safe. It looks unstable. Because if Mercedes really pushed the W17 beyond safe operating limits chasing performance, this may not be the last catastrophic failure we see this season. And the terrifying part for Mercedes? Once drivers stop trusting the car, championships start collapsing unbelievably fast. Canada was supposed to save George Russell's championship. Instead, it may have completely destroyed his trust in Mercedes. At first, the weekend looked perfect. Russell dominated qualifying, won the sprint, controlled the opening phase of the Grand Prix, and for nearly 30 laps, he looked like the fastest driver on the entire grid. That is what makes everything afterward feel so dangerous now. Because this was not a driver making mistakes under pressure. This was a driver doing almost everything perfectly, before the car suddenly died underneath him. And now, the deeper people inside Formula One investigate what happened, the more uncomfortable the story becomes for Mercedes. The W17 looked unbelievably strong in Canada. The upgrades transformed the car immediately. Better launches. Stronger traction. More stability through the chicanes. Russell and Antonelli were pulling away from the field while fighting each other aggressively at the front. That level of dominance matters enormously. Because whenever one team suddenly unlocks huge performance gains under new regulations, rival teams instantly begin studying every detail. Especially electrical systems. And this is where the situation around Mercedes starts becoming explosive. Russell later admitted he heard strange noises before the complete shutdown happened. That single detail changed the atmosphere across the paddock immediately. Because catastrophic failures rarely happen completely without warning. Especially in modern Formula One. These cars are packed with sensors monitoring temperatures, electrical loads, energy deployment, cooling systems, and battery behavior constantly. Teams receive enormous amounts of live data every lap. So naturally, people started asking questions. Did Mercedes already see warning signs developing before the failure happened? And if they did, why was Russell still pushing at maximum intensity while fighting Antonelli? That is the part making this situation so uncomfortable internally. Because the battle between Russell and Antonelli was not calm teammate racing anymore. It was aggressive, personal, relentless. The lead changed multiple times. Russell defended hard into the chicanes. Antonelli attacked constantly with DRS. Neither driver backed down even slightly. And under the 2026 regulations, those fights create enormous stress on the electrical systems inside the car. The MGUK now operates under massively increased power demands compared to previous years. In simple terms, every aggressive acceleration zone places huge pressure on the system. Now imagine 2 Mercedes drivers pushing each other at maximum attack for nearly 30 laps straight. That may be exactly where the real danger started. Because if Mercedes already suspected the system was operating near its limit, allowing that level of internal fighting suddenly becomes a much bigger story. And this is why the FIA attention matters so much now. The governing body has not publicly accused Mercedes of wrongdoing. That has not happened. But deeper scrutiny alone creates enormous pressure inside Formula One. Because once technical questions begin surrounding a dominant car, rival teams immediately become aggressive politically. Every future Mercedes performance gets questioned. Every electrical behavior pattern gets analyzed. Every future reliability issue becomes suspicious automatically. And emotionally, George Russell may now be trapped in the worst position possible. He knows he was fast enough to win Canada. He knows the car failed after showing warning signs. And now he may be wondering whether Mercedes fully understood the risk before the shutdown ever happened. That destroys trust quickly inside Formula One teams. Because drivers can survive bad luck. What they struggle to survive is the feeling that preventable risks were ignored while championships were on the line. Especially when your teammate benefits directly from your disaster. That emotional imbalance is becoming impossible to hide inside Mercedes now. Antonelli inherited another victory. 5 consecutive wins. A 43-point championship lead. Meanwhile, Russell walked away sounding emotionally exhausted after what should have been the strongest weekend of his season. And Toto Wolff suddenly looked far more tense than a team principal who had just won a Grand Prix normally should. Because deep down, Mercedes may already understand the terrifying truth. Canada did not just expose a reliability problem. It may have exposed the exact moment the team started losing emotional control of its own championship fight. The terrifying part for Mercedes is that the emotional damage from Canada may now be spreading faster than the technical damage itself. Because once a Formula One driver begins doubting the team behind him, every single decision suddenly feels personal. And George Russell now has reasons to doubt almost everything. Think about the sequence carefully. Russell heard unusual noises during the race. The car still looked incredibly fast. Mercedes kept him pushing aggressively while fighting Antonelli. Then suddenly, complete electrical failure while leading comfortably. Now imagine sitting inside that garage afterward trying to process what happened. You know you were fast enough to win. You know the championship momentum could have shifted completely. And now the FIA is reportedly looking deeper into the technical details surrounding the failure while questions grow about what Mercedes truly knew before the shutdown happened. That creates paranoia extremely quickly inside Formula One. Because drivers operate almost entirely on trust. Trust that the engineers are protecting the car. Trust that the team is giving honest information. Trust that risks are being managed equally between both sides of the garage. The moment that trust weakens, the entire emotional structure of a championship team becomes unstable. And Canada may have pushed Mercedes directly into that danger zone. Especially because Antonelli's side of the garage now feels completely different emotionally. Everything is flowing naturally for him. 5 victories in a row. Calm radio communication. Perfect championship momentum. Even after inheriting the lead in Canada, Antonelli immediately settled into controlled race management without panic. That matters enormously inside Formula One. Because teams naturally move emotionally toward success. Nobody says it openly. But mechanics feel it. Engineers feel it. Confidence becomes contagious inside winning environments. And now Russell may be feeling the exact opposite emotion. Isolation. Not officially. Not publicly. But emotionally. Because Canada was the type of race that changes how drivers see situations internally. Before the failure, Russell looked fully capable of stopping Antonelli's momentum directly on track. After the failure, he suddenly sounded like a driver emotionally exhausted by circumstances outside his control. That shift is incredibly dangerous. Because frustrated drivers often stop thinking strategically long-term. They start chasing immediate redemption. More aggressive overtakes. Harder qualifying laps. Greater willingness to force situations instantly. And under these 2026 regulations, that driving style places even more stress on systems already operating near their maximum limits. That is the hidden cycle now threatening Mercedes. Pressure creates aggression. Aggression increases system stress. System stress creates reliability fear. Reliability fear destroys trust. Then the emotional pressure grows even stronger afterward. And all of this is happening while the FIA reportedly continues examining the technical circumstances surrounding the failure more closely. That alone changes the atmosphere around Mercedes massively. Because once governing bodies begin monitoring one team more aggressively, rivals immediately start applying political pressure behind closed doors. Questions become louder. Data comparisons become more aggressive. Every future Mercedes performance becomes controversial automatically. And now imagine Mercedes entering the next race weekend carrying all of that at the same time. Reliability uncertainty. Growing FIA scrutiny. An emotionally damaged Russell. An unstoppable Antonelli. And a car that may still be the fastest machine on the entire grid. That combination is unbelievably volatile. Because dominant Formula One teams rarely collapse through one giant disaster. They collapse because pressure slowly destroys internal stability piece by piece. One reliability issue damages confidence. One controversial explanation damages trust. One emotional rivalry starts poisoning communication. And eventually, the entire structure holding the team together becomes fragile. That may already be happening inside Mercedes now. Especially because Toto Wolff's reaction after Canada felt unusually careful. Not relaxed. Not celebratory. Careful. Like someone trying to control a situation becoming much bigger than a normal retirement. And the terrifying part for Mercedes is this. If another electrical problem appears soon, especially during another direct fight between Russell and Antonelli, Canada may stop looking like bad luck completely. It may start looking like the exact moment Mercedes lost control of both the car and the people driving it. And this is where the entire Mercedes situation could become impossible to contain. Because if George Russell truly starts believing the team hid critical information about the Canada failure, the relationship inside Mercedes may already be entering dangerous territory. Formula One drivers can accept losing races. They can even accept mechanical failures. What they struggle to accept is feeling exposed. Especially when championships are on the line. And Canada created the exact kind of emotional fracture that can destroy trust inside a garage unbelievably fast. Think about what Russell knows now. He heard warning noises before the shutdown. The car kept running at full attack anyway. Mercedes allowed the fight with Antonelli to continue aggressively. Then the entire electrical system collapsed while he was leading the race. That sequence changes everything psychologically. Because now every future conversation between Russell and the engineers becomes heavier emotionally. Every reliability discussion matters more. Every radio instruction feels more sensitive. And every future issue inside the car immediately raises another question in Russell's mind. What are they not telling me? That is the exact mindset championship teams fear most. Because once drivers start doubting information from inside the garage, communication begins breaking apart slowly. Not publicly at first. Quietly. Shorter radio responses. More frustration during debriefs. Less emotional trust during strategic calls. And eventually, the atmosphere inside the team becomes toxic under pressure. That is why Canada may become such a defining moment later in the season. Not because Mercedes lost one race. Because Canada may have damaged the emotional structure holding the entire project together. Especially while Antonelli keeps becoming stronger every single weekend. That contrast inside the garage now feels extreme. Antonelli sounds calm, confident, completely comfortable carrying the pressure of the championship lead. Russell sounds emotionally drained. Like a driver trying to convince himself the situation is still under control. And Formula One drivers notice those emotional shifts immediately. Not just the drivers themselves. The mechanics notice it. The engineers notice it. The entire energy around each side of the garage begins changing naturally. One side gains momentum. The other side gains frustration. That imbalance spreads through teams incredibly fast. And now add another layer making the situation even more dangerous. The FIA scrutiny. Because once governing bodies begin examining one team more aggressively, pressure inside the garage multiplies instantly. Engineers become defensive. Technical meetings become tense. Every future data anomaly creates panic. And rivals begin pushing harder politically behind closed doors. That atmosphere destroys calm decision-making. And calm decision-making is exactly what Mercedes desperately needs right now. Because the W17 still looks unbelievably fast. That is the trap. Mercedes knows the car can dominate races when everything functions correctly. Canada proved that clearly before the failure happened. Russell and Antonelli looked untouchable during the opening stages. So naturally, the team will feel pressure to keep pushing. More electrical deployment. More aggressive setups. More performance extraction from systems already operating near their maximum limits. But now every extra step forward carries another risk. Another failure. Another controversy. Another emotional explosion between the drivers. And eventually, Formula One situations like this usually reach a breaking point. Because pressure never stays stable forever. It builds. Slowly. Quietly. Until one final moment pushes everything over the edge. Maybe another electrical issue. Maybe a direct collision between Russell and Antonelli. Maybe a future FIA ruling that increases scrutiny even further. Whatever the trigger becomes. Canada already changed the atmosphere inside Mercedes permanently. That is the real story now. Not just the DNF. Not just the investigation. Trust inside Mercedes suddenly looks fragile. And once trust becomes fragile inside a championship team, even the fastest car in Formula One can start falling apart incredibly quickly.